I'm Eric from Longbox Review.
I'm Peter from the Daily Rios, and this is episode 49 of Eric and Peter's Legion Project Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Legion Project Podcast. This is your host, Peter.
And your other host, Eric.
And we are here in the new year. Happy New Year, Eric.
Happy New Year.
Our first new episode of the new year to take a look at issue 49 of Legion of Superheroes, as well as some other things. And we have some fun feedback that we got that we're going to take a look at. And we have some other announcements that we're going to handle at the back end of the episode.
Ooh.
We're heading to episode 50. Energy, excitement. Eric's retired.
What?
It just changes everywhere. Dogs and cats getting, whatever that is. Yeah. Fun time.
I was excited about this, and I talked about this retirement thing on one of my last Gutters episode.
Jaw-dropping conversation, just absolute jaw-dropping while I was driving, both out of jealousy, anger, and just,
yeah. But one of the things that I thought would be a great benefit of, or a side effect or something of this change in my life is that now I could record with Peter at much better times of the day, except for this recording, because we're recording at our normal time, which is really late at night for him. That's just because of schedules. But in the future, though, I'm hoping that Peter, I can impose upon you on these recordings, and like I said, maybe just after lunchtime for you or something.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
Or whatever. But
if our whims match up, and once we get past episode 50, if we feel like, we always talk about, we would love to record more, but it's just, you have lives, I have lives. But now you're retired, so you're living like, living like a king over there. So,
well, you know what? I probably shared this later on a different episode, but my wife came down to my office the other day, where I was here taking notes, not for this episode, but for some other episodes. And she's like, "Are you just going to spend your whole time in retirement in your office?" So we'll have to talk about the particulars of what you just brought up.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what's that thing? At work, you always have everybody always has a work husband, work wife. So you have podcasting brothers. That you have a whole podcasting family that you got. So all good. As we said, first episode of the new year. Issue 49 technically is the start of year 5 of this series. If you count every 12 issues, right?
Yeah.
So it's, in the way where the story falls, this being the 4th chapter of this conspiracy story, it doesn't quite time out, but we're, issue 50's coming up. So I feel like, we have a temporary fill-in artist for this issue because Greg LaRocca is gone. A lot of changes in that regard. So, this being the start of the 5th year, I think is kind of fun. I think it's kind of fun for us. And technically, basically, more or less the last quote-unquote year of this run. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And then we'll get at, and we'll literally be at about 5 years later.
Yeah. Very true. All right. Anything else for our preamp? Any Legion stuff? Did you order the DC style guide?
I did.
Did you get it?
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay.
I actually had ordered that directly when the announcement was first put out. I immediately went to the printer, and because you could order directly from them,
Yes.
and ordered it, and then it was like a week later, within a week, then DCBS was emailing everybody saying, "Hey, we're going to have some of these. You can order them." And so I ended up paying like, I don't know, I'm just going to estimate like $20-$30 more than if I'd waited to order it. But anyway, yes. And I got it shortly after it was scheduled to come out. And I know some people, it took a week or two before they got their copy. So anyway, you got one too, right?
Yep, got it through DCBS. Okay. Yep, my last package. Haven't flipped through it all, but I wanted to. Is there any Legion stuff in it? Or even in the group shots? I really don't think there is.
Other than superpowers related, tiers in it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember. I don't recall seeing that in there.
Yeah. I mean,
but there's some nice new Teen Titans stuff that was in a later style guide than the famous 82, right? 1982 style guide that this is based mostly on. So there's some stuff from George Perez in this book. So that was great to see.
Yeah. So like I said, I didn't go through it completely. If there is, I just missed it. I don't need a listener to say, yeah, it's right here on page. No. We'll get through it.
Well, yeah.
but as both Eric and I are big DC fans, and I think fans of this kind of content, this kind of material that has been so elusive for many years. Thank God for the internet, that you can look at all this stuff online, but to actually have it, yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I want them now, somebody, to put out all the other style guides that DC's had over the years, because I know that they've done other style guides with other artists,
right?
Or they've just simply added to the style guide. So what who's doing what now? That kind of a thing. So
yeah,
that'd be cool to see all of those things eventually. But anyway,
okay. As we said, we did get some feedback, some amazing feedback that we've been sitting on only because we haven't been recording. But one of the emails that we got, we had already recorded an episode, so of course we couldn't include it at that time. So we're going to get to it now. And why don't you let the listeners know who it's from?
All right. So we got a lot of feedback on various issues that Mike Atchison was reading, and Mike, I'm just gonna summarize some of the things you put in there, but I want to thank you because he sent a couple emails that were a lot of different things that he provided feedback for about these issues, but it's in the interest of time, I'm going to summarize a bunch of these. But he said he was laid up, and I know exactly what he refers to by that now, but because he and I have been communicating. But he had time to catch up on our episodes and the reading, and then provide some of these notes. So
first of all, which is no small feat, because these are lengthy episodes. So
yes,
bravo. Mr. Mike Atchison.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me, Peter. Sorry. Side note. When I was out visiting my daughter here recently, I met up with my podcast friend Damien, who goes by Sleepy Reader 666, and we got to talking and stuff, and he told me that he really likes listening to our conversations, but he can't keep up with doing the reading and listening to the episodes. So I think I believe he was essentially saying he was behind. But he does enjoy listening to us talk about Legion.
Oh, good.
Even if he's not up to where we're at. Anyway, so back to Mike's email. So for issue 42, Peter, which one was that? Issue 42. What was that about?
Oop.
Put you on the spot.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Hold on. I'll get it. Issue 42 is the start of the Millennium crossover.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at his feedback for issue 43. I'm like, oh, I should have known that. Anyway, he said he loved the issue. It's been some time since I could say that about this run. So I found that very interesting. He also mentioned perhaps reading the 37 Millennium event tie-ins, to which I'm going to ask Mike here. Did you do that? Because I didn't. And then for issue 43, that again, the second part of the Laurel story, he liked it overall, but as he says here, like Peter said, if she's been around for 1,000 years, what's she been doing? And like I said, Eric said, he said, the wasted potential. Issue 44, I think this is the one where Wildfire goes to Quizlet's dimension. He didn't like Wildfire's new design, nor that of Quizlet's people, though he says their hive mind society structure made them somewhat interesting. And I think we mentioned that, especially you talked about that hive mind stuff. Next issue, 45, he says, I remember back in the day being undecided about Ken Stacy's art. I like this cover, though. And 45 was, I'm not...
That is the Lightning Lad anniversary.
Oh, right. That's right.
With the Luck Lords.
Yes. Speaking of which, he said he liked the design of the Luck Lords and their shtick, but the mysterious speaking in threes pattern got annoying to him. I'm like, yep, I totally understand that. Issue 46. While I agree with Eric's theory that what Levitz is doing amounts to character assassination of Polar Boy, thank you, Mike, the newbie leader does show some redeeming humility when admitting being team leader is harder than he thought. Additionally, he says, I know Phantom Girl did the right thing in not disrupting Cam's mission, as it could have put him in jeopardy. And this again comes up in this issue. The Phantom Girl and Dawnstar. But I don't understand why she needed to lie to her teammates about seeing him. Surely they would have understood and followed her lead as a senior member of the Legion, like Peter said. And then finally, for issue 47, he questions the wisdom of assigning leadership based on seniority and is bored with Cam's mission. To which I say, yes.
He also, just to go back to issue 42, he is not a fan of Polar Boy as leader. The more I see of him, the more I dislike him, at least the way he's portrayed. Maybe you are right, that Levitz was trying to get back the readers that voted him into the position.
That's one of my favorite suppositions of yours, by the way.
You know, when we talked about Element Lad as leader, and if people said that Element Lad wasn't, or if he himself said that he wasn't a great leader, you know, and then I said, well, that's just because he was leader at a time where Levitz was really digging into telling stories that were not dark, but just, you know, the Universo Project and the Mystery of Censor Girl and the Legion of Supervillains, like, that he survived as a leader during all of that is fantastic, you know, like, maybe he's not so hands-on, and he's certainly not aggressive like Polar Boy. But there are you do start to see some things in Polar Boy's characterization where it's like, that's just not right, you know, and on the flip side, I'm starting to see Levitz favor some sort of pushing someone else in hopes that the readers might vote that person in. And I'm speaking with full knowledge of what's going to happen. So it is interesting and you know what? If I was in his position, I would be manipulating the heck out of it too.
Oh yeah.
You know? Yeah. So I fully get that.
Anything else from Mike's feedback that you wanted to point out, Peter?
Just that he took the time to write it all out. He did also say, I can't remember which episode it came up in, but yes, that was me that had an uncle that worked at World Color Press in Sparta, Illinois, just 20 miles from where I live. Uncle Flap, as we called him, is the culprit that brought me and my brother stacks of comics a few times a year and launched my lifetime love of comics. What an amazing story.
Yeah.
What an amazing story.
Yeah.
Mike, if you have not sat down and told that story on a podcast, you should. Because just the idea that you have that connection to World Color Press and that your uncle, you know what I mean? Like, that's amazing. That's amazing. So,
well, it's funny you mentioned that, Peter. Thank you for the nice tee up. But he did talk about this on an episode, on one of the episodes of my show. So yeah, I'm very familiar with that that bit of trivia from his life. So yeah, he talked about that
in like not super recent, but
if you go back in the feed, it's a few episodes ago. I don't know.
Okay, I listened to that. I'll have to go back and listen to it again. Yeah. I'm sure he has other, like, it would be cool for him and his brother to sit down. Like, just, I don't know.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome.
You know,
yeah.
I don't know if his uncle is still with us. You know, just any sort of info, like really just get into your memory and like, you know, what was that like? What did they smell like? You know, coming right from the printer. That's amazing.
Shane on CGS would appreciate that.
Absolutely. So you can listen to more of Mike Atchison on the Campus Comics Cast, but also on Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow, which is just another really great podcast, especially if you want to hear the ins and outs of various comic book retailers, owners and managers from across the world. Yeah. Not just America, but from the world.
That is probably one of the most interesting things about Mike's show is that perspective, you know, that worldwide perspective, not just, you know, a certain region, even of just the US, you know, so I highly recommend Mike's show.
Yeah. And you've made what, 2 appearances on that, right?
Actually, that's true.
Yeah, okay. Mike, I've only had 1.
Whoops.
No, I'm kidding. Because the second part of his episode is when the retailer or the owner recommends a trade, Mike then goes and reads that trade, usually in an episode with a special guest host. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, another fun. He's got a really great format going for him. So please check that out. Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow. Okay, we're good. Yes, that's enough preamble. Shall we talk our own topic here? Legion of Superheroes issue 49?
Yes, let's do so.
Okay.
All right. Issue 49, A Time to Live is the title. Even though I don't know how, I can't remember if I brought this up, but they're putting sort of title like text on the covers that's not matching the interior. So I don't know what that's about, but the issue is titled A Time to Live, and go back and listen to episode 48 about issue 48, in which I talked about the connection to the biblical text that I think Paul Levitz is at least alluding to here. Anyway, as I said, so Paul Levitz, he wrote it. Peter mentioned this before. We've got a guest penciler in Pat Broderick, so he's not just doing the cam bits as he has for the last few issues, but he did the entire issue this time. So for me, that's a return, because when I started reading Legion of Superheroes, Pat Broderick was the penciler on the title. And so this is, a return to form, so to speak, for me. However, a different inker, I'm sure, than those issues, all those issues ago. With Mike DiCarlo, he continues as inker. Although, Peter, Bob Smith is listed on the cover.
Oh, right. You had thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, I have a few things about Bob Smith, just because it's an odd thing, right? They screwed up. Somebody messed up, or I don't know what. But I did some research trying to figure out, did Bob do some of it and Mike DiCarlo had to come in and finish it, or did he just do a little bit? But I don't know. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. John Costanza is our returning letterer, as well as Carl Gafford as colorist, Karen Berger editor, with another cover by Ken Stacy. As I said, Bob Smith, he did ink issue 16 of Legion of Superheroes. And I wonder, Peter, if whoever was mocking up the cover for publication accidentally grabbed the text from issue 16 and pasted it on the cover or something. I don't know. Anyway, it was weird. But I wanted to say also, I thought this was interesting as I was reading. So Bob Smith was born in, and you could cut this out if you'd like, Peter, but he was born in Aberdeen, Washington, which is the central western portion of the state, which is basically just a state away from me. So it's like you cross Washington and there you are. It's also the birthplace of Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic of Nirvana, and Patrick Simmons of the Doobie Brothers, for those that are older than Peter and I. It is also where artist John Workman studied at Grays Harbor College, which Smith also attended. And Workman is known for his frequent partnerships with writer-artist Walt Simonson, and also for lettering the entire run of Grant Morrison and Rachel Pollack's written Doom Patrol series.
Very cool.
So all those connections. And yeah, I find this kind of stuff fascinating. So, all right. With that out of the way, let me give you the synopsis of the issue. Starts off with Sensor Girl barges in and confronts the conspirators in Brainiac 5's lab. Mon-El warns Sensor Girl not to use her powers in anger when everyone doubles over in agony. Meanwhile, after having just arrived at Legion HQ, Dawnstar and Phantom Girl continue their disagreement regarding their mission. What is this? It feels like 5 or 6 issues, Peter. I know it's probably only 2. When they too experience an agonizing pain. Polar Boy's team, who is off planet, also experiences this pain while in deep space, but they recover quickly except for White Witch. Polar Boy supposes the pain originated from his flight ring. Starfinger observes a recovering Timberwolf on a monitor who dismisses the pain as indigestion. Starfinger then, sort of angrily, orders Starlight and Starbright to fetch Dr. Hazig, which they do. And Hazig is in his new, what he calls an experimenter bubble. They bring him to Starfinger, who announces Hazig will die for his failure. Hazig begs for more time, which Starfinger grants for some reason. Maybe just so we have 17 pages of material to talk about. Sensor Girl admits a debt must be paid, but she knows that a divided Legion cannot survive. Saturn Girl then begins to explain the situation. She describes when she, Brainiac 5, and Mon-El brought Superboy's coffin to Shangri-La, where they swore an oath of vengeance. It's then that Duo Damsel arrived, and then there were 4 of them. Sensor Girl proposes that all of the Legion now be involved, to which Saturn Girl agrees. However, Sensor Girl knows that the 4 conspirators swore to die if they must, to protect the other Legionnaires. Back on Mars, Colossal Boy explains to Chameleon Boy that he became Hazig to get Chameleon Boy, telling him that he knew Cam would try to take down Starfinger and, quote, I couldn't let you take that risk alone. Cam eventually asks his friend how he intends to avoid being murdered without having to kill the Legion. We get no answer to that, because back at Legion HQ, the assembled Legionnaires discuss the attack, with Shrinking Violet wanting to take action now, but Shadowlass admonishes her and says they should respect the chain of command and wait for Polar Boy's edict. Sensor Girl arrives somewhere on Earth that is green and lush. She walks up a hill toward a tree where a man sits, and she asks him to help the Legion. And he sighs. Starfinger security informs him that unless Mon-El is in the first wave of Legionnaires to attack them, they would have time to depart. This enrages Starfinger, and he attacks his men. Starfinger. He then storms off to Hazig's lab. In the multi-lab at Legion HQ, Brainiac 5 admits defeat. Quote, breaking the time barrier is beyond us, but, spoiler, Ron Vidar, who is very much alive, arrives, telling him there is a way. And finally, despite Hazig's assurances to Starfinger that he needs mere hours to complete his work, Starfinger decides to look into Hazig's eyes to see for himself if Hazig can kill the Legionnaires. It's a new power that we hadn't learned about with Starfinger, Peter. He now knows that Hazig is Colossal Boy. He blasts the experimenter bubble, causing Reefage to cry out, betraying himself as a Legionnaire. Starfinger sics Starlight and Starbright after Cam, and after a brief tussle, Cam takes on Starfinger and loses. Colossal Boy starts to grow to attack him, but Starfinger blasts him too. He picks up both of the men, declaring that with them he now has the tools to destroy the entire Legion. To be continued in the annual, I assume.
Yes. To be continued in the annual that doesn't come out for at least 3 more issues. So.
Oh, I did not realize that. Wow.
Yeah. And you know, we're going in publication order. So
yeah,
once this issue wraps up, we're actually not going to get to the ending for, like I said, multiple episodes because we have things planned. Yeah, so it's kind of strange. So I'm curious to see how that'll play out in the issues that are in between.
Right. You know? I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
So, but those are our rules for the Legion project. We're going in publication, so can't jump ahead.
You're just doing this to prolong my agony with this damn villain that will not die.
I know. That's okay. All right. General thoughts for the issue? Do you want me to go since you just did all that? Okay.
Yeah, you go ahead first.
Okay. We've been saying that we were wanting this story to ramp up, especially once I found out it's a 5-chapter story. I think the first issue was fine. The second issue was, third issue, okay, we were starting to move. There were some scenes in that I really enjoyed. This is the first one I felt was a solid read from beginning to end, was well worth the wait, even if I still wish some of this had played out a little earlier.
Yeah.
But I felt like this was a good issue. This was a good chapter, and it was a good issue, which are two different things, you know. And there are some parts of this story, some scenes, the marriage of the words in the pictures, the sequential nature, the Legion stuff that I haven't felt in a number of issues, I think. So, you know, I wrote a couple times in my notes, oh, there's the Levitz we know and love. There he is. There's the Levitz that gets, you know, really good stuff out of the artist, you know, to put on the page. And I'm assuming Levitz worked with Broderick before in those issues maybe that you read, right?
I think so.
I think so, because he's been on for a long time. So we can look that up real quick. But regardless, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I'm really happy that we got some answers. Pat Broderick is a complete professional, that even though he is a quote unquote fill-in for this, and we've been seeing pages from him in the previous chapters, I like that he didn't go too far removed from the look of this book. The pacing of the book felt the same. There are much more imaginative panels and pages than maybe that Greg LaRocque might have done, but it wasn't so jarring going from LaRocque's final issue to this issue to what we're going to get next issue, you know. And like I said, it helps that Broderick has been around for a couple of issues. So I walked away and was like, yay, it's good stuff to be able to talk about in this. I'm so looking forward to that. So that's what makes the issue like even better than it probably is, because I'm like, oh, good, we got stuff to talk about. Love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt the same way. I thought it was a good, unlike I'll say the last 2 issues, where things were very, very disjointed, and part of that is the art, the different art, but you know, the things seemed to be very distinct, but contained within the issues, right, together. And this, I felt like not only are we obviously racing to the conclusion of both plots. Well, I guess racing in one of them and the other one's now 3 months down the road, but or 3 issues down the road. But I felt like even thematically, they seem to be kind of mirroring each other with revelations and just the overall conflicts are similar as they're described here. So I thought it was a really nicely done issue as well. It was great to see Broderick drawing the rest of the cast and not just Reefage.
Yes.
and Hazig.
Finally, yes.
Yeah, because and he could draw some really nice pictures. But like I said, having remembered him before, and I just looked it up, Peter. It was Paul Levitz that wrote the. Actually, I in my memory, Peter, I thought that Broderick did more of these issues than I recall. But it looks like it was only maybe even one, and he did some covers.
Okay.
So sort of a similar situation in a way, because that's in that time period. I'm looking at like the 280s, the early to mid 280s. Broderick did the pencils for 284, and then did the next few covers. But Giffen takes on or comes on in 285. It looks like, yeah, according to my database here.
Okay.
So anyway, but thinking back on that, because Bruce Patterson was the inker at that time, and I really like that combination. I'm not particularly fond of DeCarlo's inks on Broderick's work, but it's also been, when did 285 come out? 284, I mean. That was 1982, and we're now in, what'd you say, 88, 89?
88.
88? Okay, so it's only a few years later. Okay, good. Because I was wondering if maybe Broderick had changed his art style a little bit, but I would kind of doubt that. But anyway, I like I said, I quite enjoyed this, and I couldn't say that about the last couple issues.
Yeah.
Overall, I mean, they were fine, but this is really now things are starting to ratchet up, and that's what I like. I want to see that, especially when you got a 5-part thing that they've named. It should feel a lot more thrilling, and it hasn't been.
Especially leading up to issue 50.
Exactly.
Yeah. This issue came out April 19th of 1988. So just to put our listeners into context, can we backtrack to what you said about the inking? I want to hear what you have to say about Bob Smith too, what you found out about that, because there are times where I do feel like there's different inkers going on certain pages. And I actually didn't mind the DeCarlo stuff.
Well, it's not. I'm not trying to suggest that DeCarlo is a bad inker at all. What I remembered liking of the Patterson Broderick team.
Sure,
I like that better than what I'm seeing here.
Gotcha.
But I'm also DeCarlo. I never really liked DeCarlo.
Sure.
Generally.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. I did not find any information regarding Bob Smith. Did he actually do some of this or not? But I agree with you that there are pages where it's like, this doesn't seem like DeCarlo. So what, I'm looking, just for one example, page 19, that doesn't look the same to me as other pages.
Right. Or the one that really stands out to me is page 11. When you look at Saturn Girl.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the line work, and DeCarlo is usually much thicker, much
yes.
The line work is full, thick black strokes. And now, is that because is Pat Broderick, the pencil work might be lighter, feathery, there might be a lot more levels to it, whereas Greg LaRocque, I feel like, is very singular in his line. Like he does outlines and the costume work. but I don't think he does as detailed shading and sculpting of bodies, like the Mon-El on page 3. So I should have looked at the original art for this, and maybe I'll just do that for next issue, for next episode, real quick. Try to find some original art and see if it, because there's original art all over Comic Art Fans for this series.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who have there's like one guy who has multiple issues of this run. It's crazy.
Bastard.
So, yeah. Good. All right. So we'll save other discussion when we get into the main discussion portion, because I think we're just going to hit the same notes. The cover, sure, fine. We got both storylines here, even if they don't converge in the manner that's on the cover. Mm-hmm. But I do like the notion of Starfinger's ring almost bringing the 4 conspirators to light out in the open, which is very much part of the story. So even though it's a little bit artistic license, I love the theme.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at this. If only it were reflected in the story, that would just make it, chef's kiss.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is, I've gone back and forth with Stacy's covers. It seems like every other one is great and the others are not. And this is in the latter category for me as well. I mean, it's fine. It's fine, but it's not, go ahead.
No, finish it out. Yeah.
It's not as good as the last issue, for example, or
sure.
The last one, I don't know. Whichever ones we gushed about.
Yeah, the first one was the one everybody pointing to each other. The second one was
Mm-hmm.
Cam as Refige. The third one was Mon-El and the White Dwarf. Right. And now this one. We're playing tennis here. I'm going to throw it back to you again. It is part of the story, because isn't it through Starfinger and all of the Legionnaires' rings that the secrets actually helped, maybe not to be exposed, but just the notion that it is an attack on the Legion,
Mm-hmm.
And even though it doesn't happen directly through Starfinger's ring, it does happen because of Starfinger. So
yeah,
you could look at it as that.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Thematically, the theme that you're going for here, that's really great. Like I said, I just wish it would had Levitz had tied those ideas a little bit more strongly, or tied the two plots together in some fashion other than the Legionnaires are doing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so amazing that those two storylines are running together. Like you said, you're finding parallels, and I found some parallels in last issue between the conspirator stuff and the Starfinger stuff. And yet he's like, nah, they're never going to it's like it's an attack on them, but they're not going to ever know it. They're not going to at least I'm assuming, they're not going to confront it. Again, at least I'm assuming. Because I don't know if I've ever read that annual that wraps it all up, even though I know some of the things that happen in it. So, it's definitely one of those things that's like, when a title is beating something. Oh, it's like, come on, the Trial of the Flash. How long did that last? Titans Hunt, the first one. How long did that last? Oh my God,
yeah.
There are some stories where you're just like, So thank God for issue 50 and for Who Comes Back, because it'll wash away. But again, a lot of good stuff in this issue to talk about. So, Any other thoughts on the cover for you?
No. Other than I really do like the coloring of Starfinger in the background of this coverage.
Yeah.
The shading of it, or I'm not sure what the right artistic.
Yeah, looks like stippling. Looks like taking the brush and just letting the paint fly off the brush.
Yeah, where his bubble is.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that and it's such a stark contrast to the floating heads. Mm-hmm. And there's your heavy inks, which is really good, because that mirror, that's what you would see if you got this light source behind you.
Sure.
So yeah, I appreciate. It's just okay. There they are.
All right. Okay, so let's go to our main discussion. Let's dig in. Um, what was the thing that you walked away after reading this? The one specific thing that made you go thank you, or we've been talking about this conspiracy. I think we should go to that, right? Like, how did that land for you? We finally got the revelation of what it is, and we'll talk about what it is. And let's start there. Let's start with the main point of this whole story arc.
Well, for me, it has less to do with the conspiracy itself than Censor Girls calling them out and threatening them. And that's why I put that quote from Mon-El in the synopsis. This is some serious crap. Yeah. Between the Legionnaires, and Censor Girl is the one that is pushing it. Now, I've had some issues with the way that Levitz has kind of written Censor Girl in terms of the threats that she's made before, or things that she said before about this conspiracy when she's talked to them previously. But this totally makes sense, where she's just like, she just barges right in, page 1, and just calls them out. This insane conspiracy of yours is threatening to destroy the Legion's honor. And, that just, to me, that is the best thing about this. This is what I've been waiting for four chapters, right? So what are they going to do now? First of all, they try to deflect that. She wasn't going for it. And that's when she's like, okay, basically, you're going to force me to do something. And that was my first question, was what the hell would she have done to coerce them into telling the truth before Mon-El gets all macho with her? And suddenly shirtless. I don't know if you noticed, but he was wearing his tunic before. And then all of a sudden he lifts this thing up and he's not wearing a shirt. It's like, I think Pat Broderick just wanted to draw some nipples on the guy. But anyway, so that's what I really love about this. The revelation of how the conspiracy got started is less interesting to me, because I feel like we've already gleaned that from previous discussions they've had. Maybe not the specific details about like Shangri-La or whatever, but how the Legion is going to work through this inner conspiracy of these 4, and what falls out of, what issue 50 is going to be about. And this whole idea of the Legion's honor and Censor Girl being I'll say not the leader. What's the term I'm looking for? Sigil bearer, flag bearer, something like that, right? She seems to be the representation of the Legion's honor in this sense, in the way it's presented here. I'm like, what's going to go, what's going to happen there? And we haven't had a whole lot of Censor Girl really since her debut, and then the whole mystery surrounding her. So it's been a while. Maybe she's the one that you were alluding to earlier about the leadership position going forward. Maybe. Huh?
I don't know.
All right.
I don't know.
Oh, that's right. You said but yeah. Okay. I thought maybe you were just being.
That's for a later chat. We don't talk about the future.
All right. Well, but I don't know this yet, so
okay.
This is all new to me. But yeah, so that's what I really, really loved about this. And then of course there's the revelation that is really, to me, sort of a side plot thing right now, which obviously has some connection to issue 50. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So with Ron Vidar. But that is less interesting to me than the stuff that I just described. That inner turmoil, that how is the Legion going to survive this? What changes are going to have to be made because of this? because it's not over. As Censor Girl says at one point in the issue to herself and to us, she knows that while they may have said that they're going to work with the Legion, they're not going to allow anybody else to die. They'll die first before they allow that, which means the conspiracy continues. It's just altered a bit from everybody's knowledge of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I thought for me that was the thing that was unexpected because I didn't remember, but it also it's not like it's a curve, but up to this point, my thing was the oath was they're going to kill the time trapper. That's not the oath. The oath is that they will do what they need to do, even if it means they die, to enact revenge on the time trapper. So nobody else will share that same fate. They will die if they must, however the wording is,
Right.
Which to me is, for lack of a better phrase, more heroic, at least more in line with the Legion code, right? Because if your oath is to kill the time trapper, well, that's not, how can Saturn Girl say with a straight face, we are not breaking any violations, if the oath was we're going to kill the time trapper, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Technically at that moment they haven't, but maybe they're thinking about it, And in my mind, I just was always assuming the oath was we're getting our revenge. Well, that's a part of it. The main oath is we will die if we must. Like we need to understand that we have to, if we need to die, that's what we need to do, because that's what Censor Girl spells out on page 12, right? You may believe I do not know the portion of the oath of which you do not speak, Saturn Girl, but I do. The four of you swore to die if you must, and in so doing, protect other Legionnaires from risking their lives against the Trapper. And she says, but you will not die alone.
However, on the previous page, as Saturn Girl is describing how the conspirators got together, she says, immortal or not, Legion Code of Honor or not, he would perish.
Mm-hmm. And so as she says, swore an oath of vengeance. But I still think that it's that notion, I think, that Levitz wants to reveal, because you have to go to then page, this is like we're in court, page 21. We're in a deposition for new Nudnik cabinet members. But on page 21, Levitz says, Duo Damsel says, we swore to put our lives on the line to get back at the Trapper, Brady. Like, I feel like that's the thing what Censor Girl is saying. Yes, you want to get revenge on Time Trapper, but you didn't say the first part, that you swore to put your lives on the line to get back at the Time Trapper. So I think it's a key element that Levitz, I think it's a distinction that Levitz is trying to bring to the forefront.
It's almost like it's a difference without distinction, though, to me. It sounds like he's trying to get away from the whole idea of revenge, of killing in revenge or for revenge, by making it more honorable in a sense, by bringing up this whole, well, we are going to do this. Our intent is to kill the Trapper for what he did to Superboy and us. And we will do that. We are committing to dying ourselves if need be while doing that, and protecting the other Legionnaires from having to do it. But it just seems, I don't know. It just seems in the vein of too little, too late. I don't know. It rang a bit hollow to me, or not hollow, but like he's really splitting hairs now, instead of committing to the whole idea of, no, we're going to do this. And yes, we're going to violate Legion code, and we're going to murder this guy if we can. but we're going to protect the rest of you by keeping you out of it. They tried that. It didn't work. And so they'd have to, now I'm writing for him. They'd have to do something else to continue with that. And I guess, maybe that's part of issue 50, which I have read. I've mentioned that many times, I think, but I have read issue 50. I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going at this mostly blind.
Yeah.
So anyway, I agree. I get your point. I agree with it just to some degree, but it seems like he's trying to make them appear more heroic than he maybe intended because of this conspiracy, this oath of vengeance. He wants to get around that in some way.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why he uses Censor Girl to bring it out, right? Like I still go back to the notion that I think the reason they're failing is because it's still not heroic, like I think for all the stuff that they're going through, and for the reasons why they're going through it, I think Levitz is trying to show us that this is not the right way to do it, So even though I said that's the heroic part of the oath, the heroic part is like, we're going to self-sacrifice to do this. But that's also very selfish, it's a very selfish kind of thing, right? Like, why do you forfeit the need? Why, and why would you not want to, why would you do that to your loved ones? Why would Saturn Girl do that without Lightning Lad's blessing? And why would Mon-El do that without Shady's blessing? Like everything about the way they've gone about this is all wrong. It's just all wrong. And what I thought what was so interesting was there's a moment where, so it's on page 10. This is when they're trying to break up the fight between Mon-El and Censor Girl. We've spent years together. Are we reduced to fighting each other? Both of you take a deep breath and a step back. Censor Girl, can't you accept that what we're doing here needs to be done? Censor Girl says, I know there is a debt that must be paid, Saturn Girl. In that ... is her remembering issue 5, where her husband is dead and she's killing Nemesis Kid, right? Mm-hmm. And then she says, but I also know a divided legion cannot survive, nor am I the one who began the division. And Saturn Girl says, all right, I admit that, and maybe it is time to be explained. So it's like Levitz gives us multiple scenes of characters butting heads. Dawnstar and Phantom Girl. Mon-El and Censor Girl, obviously.
Everybody and Polar Boy.
Everybody, yeah, like just there's friction going on that if you go back to the other chapters, Element Lad, Polar Boy, and Shadow Lass have all warned that something is happening, right? Like they're like, Element Lad's like, everybody's so grim, and Shadow Lass is like, can't you feel it? Like the Legion is just sort of on edge, and Polar Boy was the one who told Tellus to go and suss out what's going on discreetly, right? So it's like all of this was happening because these four decided to take it upon themselves to do this. And Censor Girl's like, just tell us what you're doing and all of that will go away. And maybe you don't have to be so self-sacrificing, like maybe we might actually find a way through it. And I thought the biggest moment for me, that hit home that they're doing it wrong, that they're doing it for all the wrong reasons, whether it is for love or friends or is when Brainy has his meltdown. And he says, I can't do it. I can't break time because of everything that Time Trapper has shown us is no longer true, right? And I was like, wow, look at that. The thing that he took from Brainy is knowledge. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. He took knowledge from Brainiac 5. That's no wonder he's trying to destroy his lab and he's okay with bringing dwarf stars to Earth. Yeah, it's no problem, So it's like they're just acting in a manner that's just it's so interesting that it falls apart. It falls apart, and it like we said about the cover, it has to come to light, and they have to include the rest of the Legion. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Whatever it is, it's not going to work.
Yeah. All right. So one thing. This is only tangentially related. So
Okay.
I find it interesting that Censor Girl. I kind of think Censor Girl is being, what's the word? I'll just explain it this way. I obviously can't think of the word. It's too late.
We're better when the sun's out.
She got to enact her revenge. Now, granted, it was a different situation. She's a monarch. She wasn't technically part of the Legion at that time, right? They hadn't, she wasn't an active member or anything. Okay. But her saying this to them about this, she didn't consult with the Legion when she murdered Nemesis Kid in issue 5, right? And yet here she is, saying that the Legion won't survive. But she's right. I'm the tongue in cheek there with that comment. I guess though, my objection to the whole thing though is that bringing it to light or them working with the Legion to do this, and this goes back to your whole idea of being selfish, right? They would be talked out of it, or they would find a different way, and then they wouldn't be able to enact their revenge in the way that they envisioned it. So it would be different, and also run the risk of others dying, and they can't. That is the one thing that they can't. Or the one line they can't cross. They can't allow that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
No one else can die, but we got to do something, and so they do this. What it reminds me of is a little bit is all those sitcoms that we watched when we were younger, and if only someone would just say something to someone, then the entire plot would just end for that episode, right? And so this is kind of the same thing. It's like if they talk to the Legion, then their plan just falls apart, or it stops, or but then we don't get the conspiracy at all.
Yeah.
And so so if this is I'm just kind of free thinking
Sure.
now.
Mm-hmm.
If the whole point is a conspiracy, and yet they've now revealed that conspiracy. The one little bit that they're not telling is not enough for me.
Mm.
It's unless they basically lie. Sound and Girl just lied to Censor Girl about, yeah, we'll work with you guys.
Oh, I don't think she did. I think this issue puts to end the conspiracy.
Oh, okay.
I think once it's out in the open, and once Censor Girl gets involved and brings Ron Vidar, who, when I got to that page of her floating up the hill, and I was like, wait, who is that? Isn't that Ron? Oh, I totally forgot about this part. I think where it's really going to play is next issue, right? Mm-hmm. If it's the four of them again, still butting heads with the Legion, then yes, then the conspiracy is still on. But if it's the four of them with not the blessing of the Legion, but at least they acknowledge that they're going to be doing this, okay, then the conspiracy is not. It is done. Then it's done. It's no longer a conspiracy. Well, it's no longer a conspiracy because everybody knows about it. So I feel like the proof is next issue, which I know from what I know about next issue, there's still some things that go wrong and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, why does it go wrong? Like, does it go wrong for the right reasons, or does it go wrong for the wrong reasons? Which is really I guess the difference. I feel like the Brainy's just the way he gives up at the end, and Mon-El keeps trying to. It's on page 22. She's like, "Come on, we can get another power source." And he's like, "No, Mon-El." In that one panel where he's just like, "No." Sometimes true wisdom must acknowledge that there are limits to what may be known and what may be accomplished. Breaking the time barrier is beyond us. And then that's when Ron comes in, and it's like, this is the flip. now I'm assuming this is the flip, and like we'll go from here. So, at least on that part, I guess we don't get to answer that question until next issue. I just sort of felt like, again, I'm not rooting for them. Like, I'm not, again, when they say our oath is that we're going to die to enact revenge, I'm like, that's dumb. Come on, you guys are better than that, Like, look what you're doing to the whole Legion. You're and if you go back to the first page of the first chapter, when they're swearing the oath, they even say, we're going to do this, even if the Legion is destroyed in the process. That's incredibly selfish, So, yeah, this issue I think the reason why I reacted to the whole, the oath is more about that they're going to die while they're going to allow themselves to die, is because I have not been on their side the whole time. I just haven't been on their side. I've been waiting for I was so, in my reread of it, I was like, even though Sensor Girl gave Magnetic Kid and Tellus her parts of information in that really great scene where she puts that sensory bubble around them, she is not actually part of the remaining issue when they go confront them in the lab with the dwarf star and all that. She's not there. And then you open up the first page and like, oh, there she is. Yes, I forgot about that. Look at that splash page. Come on. She's like, that first scene is fantastic with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm so on her side, maybe because I'm biased because she's such a cool character. And Pat Broderick gets to do some fun things with like the floating heads on page 2. The third to last panel. Again, I've never read those stories where Saturn Girl is the Ice Queen, but she is the mother effing Ice Queen in that panel. No Legion rules or traditions are being violated, Sensor Girl. You have no grounds for complaint. It's like, whoa. That's a founding member saying that.
Yeah. Well, and she kind of did it in the previous issue or 2 issues ago when Tellus and Magnetic Kid are in the lab with them.
That was last issue, yeah.
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 Yeah. She as a founding member, she knows the rules and she knows exactly how far that they can go for now, right now.
Right.
And not have violated anything.
Yeah. But I don't believe her in that panel. I think that's why she's throwing that look on her face. She's like, So yeah, I'm all for Sensor Girl in this issue. I'm all for the conspiracy to come out and that it's not going to work the way they want it to work. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And then in the middle of it, we get, Starfinger doing what he's doing, even though it doesn't necessarily mean anything in the long run for this issue.
Well, you mentioned that one, what was it, page? Oh, what is that? Page is that? 21 with Brainy and stuff. Another parallel here, we see Brainiac 5, and I'm kind of jumping to something else, but looking at this page again reminded me of that, where he's crying. And I think the last time we saw him crying was when we found out that Ron had died, or he had found out that Ron had died. And then here we are with him. Now it's a different, he's crying because of his realization, the sense of loss, the sense of futility that he must be feeling right now. So it's a different emotion, but or different source of that emotion. But then the next page we get Ron. So I'm probably splitting hairs here myself, but tangentially related to that previous issue, and I like that. Yeah. And it seemed like this issue was there's a few things like that. I've already mentioned this earlier on about the connections it was making thematically between the plots. So I just really appreciated that.
And I don't think that's a stretch. I think that's perfectly in line with the whole series. What's the other big loss where he was crying like a baby was Supergirl.
Supergirl, yeah.
Yeah. And then so it goes Supergirl, Ron Vidar, and now the notion that
Superboy.
Superboy, yep. You got to put Superboy in there.
But Superboy is the representation of all of this, of what he's talking about on that page, right? It all started with the death of Superboy. So it's all about, all three times is about death for him.
And taking away his knowledge, and on page 20 where he says, the time trapper led us into the past, but only a past he controlled. It never was my time bubble that did it. The very thing that is like a defining nature of Brainiac 5 for the Legion. Whoop,
yeah.
gone.
Yeah, so, well, and not just the Legion, but also the Time Institute and Ron and all, all that work, all those stories where they travel back in time. Yeah, that
so it's no wonder he flipped out, and it's like if he had a manic breakdown after issue 50, I'd be like, okay, he's about due, I guess. Levitz is like, well, I just put him through all these things.
Do you want to? Is there anything else about the conspiracy part of it?
Yeah, I might be beating this drum a little bit too, but this notion of it falling apart. Page 2, Mon-El says, "Who? Oh, it's Sense a Girl." This line from Duo Damsel. Woo! Keep working, Mon-El. If she wants Brainy, let him argue with her. Like, how do you read that, right? Like, let him do it, not you, or he's the one that got us in this mess. Let him deal with her. Like, I'm not dealing with her, I sort of took it like that, especially considering how big of a failure the previous experiment was last issue. Like, it's almost like, okay, he needs to take care of this, because it feels like everything hinged on this whole thing, whatever. Well, it does, because otherwise they don't break the time barrier without it. And we get nowhere. But that little bit of dialogue there from Duo Damsel, I was like, oh, wow. She sort of laying it in there.
Well, and she has been the one in this whole arc that I'm on a little bit too, but I think we've gotten a little more screen time with him.
Yeah.
That where I'm like, where, I know her motivation, but I don't understand her role. I don't know what she brings to the conspiracy. So I want more, I guess. I want more of this. And yeah, that little bit of dialogue there gives her a little bit more personality than, we've seen previously. I did not take it the same way you did, but that works too. I feel like in this scene, she's like, we don't need to be dealing with this right now. So, just let Brainy take care of it. But it works on both levels, so I like that a lot.
Yeah.
But there is, speaking of Duo Damsel, when Saturn Girl reveals the history behind this, Duo Damsel, what is it? Page 12. She says, it gives me the creeps to know one of my bodies is buried at Shangri-La. But I had to come. I loved him, Superboy, even though he never noticed. And that was another bit of dialogue. It's like, what? And we've read in the Who's Who that she is special because she should have died. Because when Kargites lose one body, the other two eventually die. Like an old married couple. One dies and the other one, just doesn't last long.
Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's different about her that she lived, and knowing what happens in a different volume of the Legion with Duo Damsel, it's like she's the tragedy that she experiences on such a personal level. I would have liked to have seen that explored more. So I guess what I'm saying is that those little bits of Duo Damsel in this issue made me hungry for more Duo Damsel stuff, like we're getting with Sensor Girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel much more connected to that character because of what Levitz has done with her. So, now give me you give me little breadcrumbs, Paul. I want a little bit more of this, and also to explore. And I think it's too late now, but unless something happens next issue, it's too late to explore what that is with Duo Damsel because we're now at that at the crescendo of the plot.
Yeah.
So it's too late. But
Yeah.
I did. That's one of the things I did take away from this. I liked it, but it left me wanting a lot more.
Sure. And certainly the outcome of issue 50 is where a writer can then go, well, I've now put many of these characters in whole new situations that I could explore if I have the time. Time being the factor, knowing that this volume is going to run out. That's going to be something that I'm assuming in your research or somewhere, it's going to be interesting to see why this volume went to 63 and stopped, knowing that Levitz wanted to leave at issue 50 and it keeps going, is it sales? Is it just Levitz wanted to go and they decided just to end it, that'll be it's a different conversation, but it'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see what other notes I have about the conspiracy. Yes, I do think you're right. And I said it before, I am so Censor Girl biased, and I think Levitz is too. She's just too cool of a character that I think has defined this volume for me.
Mm.
And
yeah, you can't leave her on the sidelines for too long.
No. That confrontation on page 3 between her and Mon-El, first of all, it goes to show just the state of mind that Mon-El is, like he said in a previous chapter where he's like, I hold 1,000-year grudges,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, don't be the first to use your powers in anger. You might not be the last. That panel where they're just staring at each other, I don't 100% think she's like thinking, oh, I'm going to, I do think there's a part of her that's like, okay, I may not come out of this. If this happens, I'm going to really have to think about how, but I don't think she's afraid.
No.
But I don't think she's 100% like, because she shut up pretty quickly. And it's an interesting standoff, it's like, boy, do I want to see it. Because you sort of would think she's not going to be able to stand up against Mon-El, but then you're like, I don't know. She might be able to. She might have things that they don't know about her.
Well, yeah, because at the beginning of that page, she's this, and I mentioned this before. If I must show you, and then she's interrupted by Mon-El, and I take her at her word that she's going to be able to do something to, and I don't know, is it just, is it just I'm going to go tell the rest of the Legion, or was she going to do something with her ability, her new abilities to be able to convince them better than her words? Because she comes in hot and accusatory, and pleading. Don't do this. Let's work together. Type of. I mean, she gets to that verbally eventually, but but it's very interesting. I agree with you about Censor Girl, because this is the interpersonal interactions here, the tension between these characters, is all because she feels something so strongly about the Legion and its unity that she's compelled to behave this way.
Yeah.
Which is counter to the way they're behaving, which is a great counterbalance. But she is just as committed and has the strength of character to be able to stand up to the most powerful being in the universe with Mon-El.
Yeah. Plus she was going to do it against Saturn Girl, who also is very powerful.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Isn't it interesting that Levitz always seems to redefine characters, making Queen Projectra into Censor Girl, rebuilding her from the bottom up, giving her these new powers, and as you said, as a way to reaffirm their commitment to the Legion, just like he did with Lightning Lass, just like he did, maybe not as hard, but just like he did with Shrinking Violet.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've been talking about all these these rebirths of these female characters. But the other added element that you're now just making me thinking about is, it's not only just that they are new and they have new outlooks and new powers and new identities and new costumes. They also have a new understanding of the Legion. And to go back to that scene with Element Lad about how the Legion is changing and all that, well, maybe that's good because these characters are changing. It's the reason why we were so disappointed that Timberwolf didn't come out of that one issue on Lethal
Mm.
with sort of he sort of did, and he's always been a Legion cheerleader. I mean, that's, but he's still himself, he still had moments of being a mopey whatever. But it's like, when they come out of it on the other side, I guess you could even say Saturn Girl after Universo Project, because she rejoins the Legion, So it's that's an interesting new way to kind of think about it, It's not only that they reinvent themselves, they reinvent their whole reason why they're with the Legion. I like that.
And how do they end up helping to transform the Legion going forward?
Yeah.
Something I just noticed while you were talking too, in that same scene between Sensor Girl and Mon-El, she says, "If I must show you," and she's interrupted, right? But Mon-El says, "Projectra." And then he goes on, not Sensor Girl, not her real name, but Projectra, calling back to a previous incarnation of herself, someone that's not around. It's almost like
he dead named her.
Yes. I was going to say it's an allegory for trans identity.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that's so. It's like,
well, isn't that typical of someone like Mon-El to think of her as Projectra, because we probably think of Projectra as weaker. Her power is not as defensive. They're more, or not as offensive. They're more on the, whatever, So is that his way of, I don't think it is. I don't think Levitz at that time was thinking that, but there is something about not calling her Sensor Girl or Jackie. I think you're right.
Yes, Jackie. Yeah. If he'd said Jackie, that'd be different, but it's Projectra. Yeah. It's calling back to a previous thing to remind her, to put her in her place, to remind her that she's not who she thinks she is,
right?
In this moment, okay, whether that was intentional or not, that was a great little bit.
Yeah, because to be fair, they do all still call each other Vi and Cam, and it's very rare that they use their real names,
Right.
But that is, I do like that. Thank you for pointing that out. That's Again, they don't come across well, It's not like I hate them or anything, but I think Levitz is okay showing them with the, some character flaws here and there.
Yeah. Can we continue the Sensor Girl love just a little bit longer?
Yes, please.
I want to talk about that page 16, that scene where. So let's see. Hold on. So why did she leave? So the last time we see her is during that discussion about the conspiracy is revealed, and very well then. This is on page 12. Very well then agreed that the time trapper must be the whole Legion's concern, not simply to have a small group. Agreed, Jackie. Going back to the name thing, now we're comrades again. We're friends again. So. But okay, so then we leave from that.
But okay, wait. That page is the reason I said what I said about the future that we're not supposed to talk about.
Oh, okay.
I think that page is the reason the thing that happens. So.
Okay.
It's like you ever watch a movie and you go, oh, that's the reason why that actor won the Oscar right there, that scene.
Oh, yeah.
There. I feel like that page is, when I was reading it, I was like, okay, but I don't want to spill it. All right, keep going. Which I probably already did, whatever.
But then for some reason, she is elsewhere, it says, and like I mentioned in the synopsis, it's green and lush, which, could be a clue as to something.
Oh, interesting. I didn't think about that. Yeah, but I forgot about that. Yeah.
Well, and I couldn't remember it. When does that come in? And I'm going to be coy on purpose here, because I don't want to spoil anything, because we try not to jump the timeline. I know,
but it's so hard because 50 is so amazing.
Oh, is it in 50?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
We're so bad at this.
Anyway, so I just really like that I had not noticed that in the first read. Mm-hmm. It was only in subsequent reads where like, oh, Oh, who is that guy? And I will admit, if I didn't already know the situation with Ron because I'd read issue 50 before I read issue 49, because I read issue 50 when it was released all those years ago.
Yeah.
So I know that Ron was around. In fact, I don't even know that I knew he had died, or maybe they mentioned it in issue 50. I don't know. We'll get there when we get there. So I had no idea. I would not have known who this was. And I'd be going, if I had read this back in the day as it was released, I'd be going, who the hell is that?
Right, right.
I would never have guessed Ron Vidar.
Yeah. I was confused, and I even knew. And then when it showed up at the last, couple pages, I was like, oh, they reveal it right away. Oh, right. Okay. Now, and then I was like, oh, yeah. Okay, this makes sense.
And even more, he sighs when she's like, we need you.
Well, he thought he was done. He thought he could live a happy life somewhere. Yeah, I don't remember any of this either. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. More of that. What comes out in the next issue, and then finally on that page, I want to give Paul a huge credit because here we go. So she lands in this area. She says he is here somewhere. I saw him when I looked, and then he seemed to vanish like a spirit loosed from the grave. I'm like, oh my God, that's wonderful poetic language right there. That's not too much. I just dig it. That was good writing.
Yeah. Or even when she says strange, the reasons that make men respect parts of their land. I love that line for some reason.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about this issue. Levitt's, it's like, that's the reason why Sensor Girl is the way she is, because he can use her to funnel all of his good writing through, It's like every time Claremont wanted to give Wolverine a speech, or Storm, or Kitty Pryde, right? Like he gets to say whatever he wants to say through these characters. And there are only a handful of characters that Levitz can do that with, He's not going to do it with Polar Boy. He's not going to do it with Block or, Timberwolf.
Yeah, that's true.
Block
that's
to
true.
a degree, but Sensor Girl? Oh yeah, he gets to do that.
And how appropriate that, a faceless character gets to be the voice of the writer.
Yeah, true. Very true. Very true. Where do you want to go to next? What do you want to, or any miscellaneous thoughts to all of that?
Okay. So, I'm sure I sounded very stupid earlier. I was trying to think of a word in relation to Sensor Girl and what she did before, and then calling them out. And the word was hypocritical. And I'm sure everybody, including Peter, were like, you dumbass. So anyway, I just want to say it came to me. I want to make sure that I didn't have like a small aneurysm or something. So there you go. So beyond the, I think everything that I wanted to, most of my notes were about the whole conspirator, Sensor Girl stuff. So the only other thing is, a complaint about the Starfinger stuff. So, which I'm glad we're coming to a conclusion of that. But, I was praising, is it okay that we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
I wasn't sure where you wanted to go next. Do you have anything else about the conspiracy stuff?
Nope.
Okay. So I was praising Levitz before for some of his language, and I think this is a very strong issue in relation to character interactions and plot progression and all that stuff. But I detest these kind of things where Starfinger decides he has to look Hazig in the eyes, and how fortuitous that Colossal Boy has put himself into this bubble for God knows why, just so Starfinger could look at him in the eye and realize who the hell he is. I don't know how you feel about that kind of stuff, Peter, but I wanted to toss the book across the room for that alone.
I think some of it is just because, again, we know his identity, not Colossal Boy, but Starfinger's identity and how that relates to Colossal Boy. But I don't think Levitz has given us clues, but I don't think they're as obvious as he thinks they are. And even in this little bit of dialogue where he's like, haha, oh, that it should be you, Colossal Boy, that he knows right away just by looking at his eyes, I half wondered if some of it was a parallel to Sensor Girl,
Yeah.
the revelation and all that. And,
And
what was the bubble?
and that would be okay, but
Yeah,
it's so clumsy.
yeah. Well, the whole Starfinger, all the Starfinger stuff is that you expected to be anything else is probably your fault, not the writer's fault at
This point, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Because the bubble, I was like, is it because Pep Roderick maybe drew this issue before the reveal of Hazig in the last issue, right? If you think about how some artists. And then Levis was like, that's not how, okay, well, I'll just come up with a thing, Some of it could have been dictated because of that,
You're probably right. That makes a lot more sense. And I will allow it a certain latitude in that case. But oh my God, I can't stand it when writers do that in any media. Just to, it's a plot contrivance. So just to move the plot forward. Oh my God, Levitz is so much better than that. But yeah, you're probably right. I am being far too picky on this whole Starfinger thing because I freaking hate it.
I mean, I'm in the same boat because, I certainly shouldn't expect more from Starfinger because one of the things that I've been thinking about was I really wanted him to know that Reefage was Cam. I wanted him to know that he was infiltrated by a Legionnaire, and he just doesn't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then he really is just a dumb criminal. I mean, or that the Arranger knew, right? Because there's a scene in an earlier issue where he's like, oh, you want to find flight rings? I know just the guy to do it. Reefage. Why? Because he's a Legionnaire. That's where I wanted these criminals to be. I wanted them to be on a level like that. But they've never been that. They've never been that in all the issues we've read, which is probably why most readers didn't come to this character, didn't like this villain. It does make you wonder why he feels the need to keep bringing it back. I don't know. So I was also in the same way because I wanted to give it a little more credit, and I was just like, okay, whatever.
Well, so you brought up that if I agree that would have been a much better way to approach this if Starfinger, or better, I think even better, the Arranger knew who Cam was because he's plotting against Starfinger. That would have been a whole great spin on this, and how that would all work out. Yeah. And maybe we'll get that in the annual. I don't think so. But yeah, sorry. That's my only point or my only thing about the Starfinger.
Yeah. I think we both said that, at least it ramped up a little bit,
Yeah.
It's not even about the plot or his goal of destroying the Legion because it's such a piss poor plot. And then it really just becomes about Cam and why is Cam doing this and Colossal Boy being the friend, to go out and stick out his neck for his friend, is it a parallel to the conspirators, like stop being so selfless, bring me along, I can help you,
Yeah. That works. Sure.
I don't know, but it's not, we have to pull that out of that, it's not really seen on there. I wrote here on pages 7 through 9 where he's like, okay, I'm not going to kill you, Hazig. I will take the time to plan a more suitable doom for you. I mean, it's in character with Starfinger. He is grand. He is bombastic, so for him to do that is such a comic book villain thing to do. fine, okay, whatever. He just doesn't work, right? Like, again, other characters that don't work. Danny Chase. I don't care how much Marv Wolfman liked him. Didn't work, right? Just doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah.
New Mutants, Bird Boy, or whatever that character was that came into the scene. I was just like, what? What the hell are you doing? Why? Like, some characters just don't work. And it's like, Levitz or Berger, tell him, get rid of this guy.
He's committed.
He is committed.
Could you imagine if Paul had left at issue 50 and he did continue, or he did decide to do the whole Starfinger thing? That would be just like a terrible way to go out, in part, right? I mean, there's the whole other part of what's going on in this arc, but oh man, I would have felt let down if we had ended his tenure on Starfinger.
Ouch. I have very few other notes for this issue. What about you?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Now I'll just quick rattle them off here. Page 4, Pat Broderick's Dawnstar. She is quite the muscle mommy. Wow. Like, yowza. Yeah. He does not skimp on the, letting some things be sexy and whatever. So.
Oh no. Yeah.
But on the flip side, like I said on page 11, just a beautiful shot of Saturn Girl. At the bottom there, just really, really great. I'm not a fan on page 5 of his Legion cruiser. I don't know why these artists don't go back and look at Keith Giffen's version of the cruiser with all the seams and the panels and the little, blocks of doodads, and no, it just looks like a giant key floating in space.
Yeah.
Like everything's too rigid. Everything's too sharp. Just not a fan. Not a fan of that. And then page 15, my last note here, because we haven't seen the character. Like, one of the things I've really enjoyed about the conspiracy, and I think it's more my thinking of it and less about what Levitz is really bringing to it, is that it's the 5 new characters that he brought in are the ones that are making this happen. It was Polar Boy that told Tellus to do what he did. It's Tellus that then brings in Magnetic Kid. And then through Magnetic Kid and Tellus, we get Sensor Girl. And the only one that's been missing is Quizlet, right? Like, I wish Quizlet would have been involved, because it really would have felt like the new versus the old, right? Like, I think that would have been an amazing thing. We don't get that. But what we do get is, one little thing here when on page 15, when Vi and Element Lad and everybody's just going at each other, and he says, "Hoo boy, Quizlet thinks Legion not so cuddly lately," which has been a running theme for a while. So it's like, it's almost like Levitz was like, "Oh God, I forgot about that floating thing. I got to put him in here somewhere."
Speaking of that scene, though, I didn't have this in my notes, but I remember wanting to talk about this. Is the concern of the Legionnaires with this new situation where they all at the same time doubled over in pain. They don't know why, right? And so they're concerned about this. Vi is very direct. Are we supposed to stand around waiting to be attacked again? And then we get the various characters saying, "Oh, of course, Timberwolf is like, yeah, Violet's right. We should." And then Elma Lad's, "No, Polar Boy's a leader. He'll call the shots." And then they argue, and then we get Shadowlass saying, "No, we've stayed alive by this." Well, no, this goes back to your whole point about the conspiracy and the Legion laws and all that stuff, right? We've stayed alive for a long time playing by the Legion's rules. Don't take chances now. And the way that Broderick drew her face, it's like she's almost like she's looking askance at the conspirators through the walls. Obviously not literally, but that's just a great little bit there.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I love all the conspiracy stuff in this issue.
So if we go to, let's go to some letter column.
Wait.
Oh,
I before we do that, I wanted to. I have some stuff from the Legion Companion about Pat Broderick's work, since we were just talking
oh,
about
sure. Yeah, great. Let's do that.
it. Yeah. So here, in the interviewer of this interview with Pat Broderick says, "You mentioned your fill-in work a few years later on the Legion." Yeah, Pat Broderick. Yeah, I had come in to help out. I believe at the time Karen Berger was editing the book, and she had asked me if I was interested in helping out on a story arc. I jumped at the chance. I enjoyed it. Obviously, it's this one. Let's see. Later in this is in 2003. Later in the interview, Broderick is asked if he would ever return to the Legion, and he said, "Only if called," quote unquote. But he was willing to. I don't know what that means, but going back to what Kurt Swan said about not liking to work on the Legion because there's so many damn characters. That's all. That's all I had. I was looking for something regarding Broderick's work on this issue, the whole Bob Smith thing, but this is the only interesting bit I could find.
Okay.
All right, letter calls.
All right. So in issue 49, Levitz is just about giving up the what's going to happen next issue when a reader asks about Peter Brewer of London, England, included a plea for Duo Damsel to return to active membership. We've seen a lot of her lately, Peter, and Duo Damsel gets her share of the action next issue, but we're not certain whether you'll be happy with the result. Levitz just putting it right out there. Like, wow.
You gotta play it up, right? Get people excited for it in any way you can.
Yeah. What does the next issue blurb say? Let's read that because that could be fun. So the first one says, "Life and Death and Time Unending," a double-length blockbuster as Keith Giffen returns to the Legion, and in this summer's annual Secrets Within the Star and the final showdown with Starfinger. Thank God. And then the other one, next month, another anniversary only months after our last, only in comics, folks. We're celebrating our 50th Baxter issue with a special-sized story reuniting Paul Levitz and Keith Giffen and sending the Legionnaires after the time trapper at the end of time. Be there, and may the Lord of Entropy not leave dust droppings on your doorstep.
Jeez.
Which leads us to issue 54 with a bunch of letters about this issue. And maybe it's a little too early. Maybe we should do this when we talk about issue 50, but whatever. This is in response to the first letter. Paul Levitz says, "As for the two parallel storylines," meaning the conspiracy and Starfinger, which we've been talking about, it's secrets behind the comics time. Our original plan before Greg announced his departure was to do 46 through 49 with two separate stories in each, building to a conclusion in 50 that would have more closely linked the two storylines. How? I have no idea. That's me saying that. Back to Paul Levitz. And that included a very different explanation of the fate of Ron Vidar. It was also to have been this writer's concluding work on Legion of Superheroes, which we've been talking about, as we've been feeling for a while that our days on this assignment are numbered for factors unrelated to the Legion. Those plans changed as we got the idea for mixing the storylines into single stories set up for two artists. Then Greg got the Flash assignment and Keith signed on again, and finally we were gently persuaded into re-enlisting through Karen Berger's pressure. So that feels like things we've been talking about.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he would have effectively ended his run with this stupid Starfinger stuff.
I don't know how he would connect the two.
Yeah. If especially if they were, well, I mean, they still are separate things, even though they're in the same issues. I'm not even sure. So wait, let me see that again. Two separate stories. Oh, in each. Yeah. Well, what's the difference? They are separate stories in each issue.
Yeah, we're I guess he's saying, two different artists were working on them, and they would have continued that in 49 as well, but they couldn't because Greg left.
Oh, I see.
And
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would have led to a more direct ending in 50 of both stories. So I
yeah.
guess once Giffen got on, or they decided to continue on past that, they were like, let's save. Maybe Levitz hit a point where it's like, I really can't connect these two stories because I can't see it. I can't see how they would connect. Thematically, yes. But actually on the page, what the specific plots are, no, I don't see that at all.
I did look in the Legion Companion for the interview with Levitz to see if there's anything relating to this, and there isn't.
Okay.
I have, going back to Broderick's work, and since you mentioned his wonderful image of Dawnstar, both Robert and Malcolm from England liked Broderick's work, with the latter saying Broderick provided some sexy images of Censor Girl, Dawnstar, and Mon-El. So that was funny. And Robert from Seattle brought up the Concentrator. Oh, I was supposed to look this up. Shoot, maybe you know. From some Adventure Comics issue. I think we talked about it before, the Concentrator. Anyway, which could work to power Brainiac 5's equipment, but Paul said he hadn't thought, he didn't think of that. He didn't think of the Concentrator, so.
That's that issue where I think it is the Time Trapper. That's right. It is actually
Yeah.
connection where the Time Trapper is like, tell us this. Each Legion member has like some specific trauma thing they go through, and he's like, what's the secret of the Concentrator? And it's all played off as like, are you a worthy Legionnaire? Can you keep the secret? And like Shrinking Violet shrinks and says it out loud, but she's so tiny nobody can hear it. And I forget which one breaks down, like Sunboy or something like that. I forget which one actually spells it out. But then, of course, it's a Silver Age story, and at the end, they're like, we knew who you were. There's no secret. The secret is that it doesn't exist, or I don't know, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, something weird like that. So, okay. Well, with that, we are now into the second part of our normal format, where we take a look at the Legion throughout the DC universe. We will start with the Who's Who, because I think there's more to say about that. So we've been reading Who's Who in the Legion of Superheroes, and at this time in April, issue 4 was released, and Eric has decided to pick Cosmic King, Lightning Lord, and Saturn Queen to go after. I'll let Eric talk about that decision. But we're also now going to have to throw in Who's Who Update 88. This is the second update. This is issue 1, because this is also released in April of 1988. Only 2 entries in here. Well, one and a 1.1, not even half. But we're going to take a look at Brainiac, from the Superman line of books, the post-crisis Brainiac, and just a little sliver of the Green Lantern Corps that just happens to mention the 30th century. So let's start with the Who's Who in the Legion. I think we'll get more conversation out of that.
Oh, yeah.
Before we actually get to the entries that you picked, they did do another tour of Legion worlds, this time home worlds of the Legion, which I thought was interesting, that they're continuing this whole media documentary type thing for the Legion, that started with issue 1, where they went through all the history. Issue 2, they went through more history. Issue 3, they went through various 30th century locales, and now they're focusing on the home world of the Legion, as drawn by Paris Cullens, Martin King, and Robert Campanella. I'll just say I totally miss Keith Giffen's depictions from the last issue. I think these are just they just don't hold up as well.
No.
I don't even think they went back and looked at other depictions of these planets from previous issues. Feels like they made them from scratch, and they're so generic, and like I almost wish they would have just pulled images from. Yeah, just do that, you know. But having said that, I did learn some things as through some of these. So
okay,
do you want me to?
Yeah,
Okay.
You start. You start.
Okay.
I only gleaned a couple things, so
Okay.
curious what you have.
All right. You can add on, or if I miss, or if there's one that I didn't touch on, then you can do that. I'll burn through them quickly here. So on Bigitzel.
Wait.
Bigitzel, whatever.
Bigitizzle.
Oh, I do like that. Hitting all the consonants. I do like that. Almost like mixes.
I hate that.
Mixes
I hate that planet name though. Yeah, it's like Mixius Pitalik.
Mixius Pitalik. Yeah. First of all, the running notion through all of them, and we've brought this up before, this idea that if you're going to be a Legion member from a world where everybody has your power, you better stand out. And they constantly mention that. They mention it in Bidget, what is it? Bidgetizzle. Okay. They say here, few of this planet's people have Phantom Girl's natural control over her powers to fade away. So she gets that spotlight. Duo Damsel gets that spotlight, as you mentioned. She's an anomaly because she didn't die when her other self died. Dawnstar.
But that's a retcon because, you know, she was Triplica Girl before, and all of her people could split into three. So what made her unique among people who can split into threes to you know, go join the Legion? I don't know that that's ever been.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Right. Maybe that's something to do with the personalities of the other characters. Yeah.
It's just an oversight type thing.
And I think most of these probably are. I hesitate to use the word retcon because it's not as severe. You know, it's just development, right? Like you have, it's something that's happened as the history went on. Yeah. Because even like for Starhaven, again, Dawnstar has powers not common to her people. And Quizlet, again, he's the anomaly, right? We talked about that in that issue. Yeah. So that was one thing overall that I really liked about all of these entries, you know, that they sort of hammered all that stuff. So then we get to Bismol, that Bismol's cuisine is abhorrent, but also that they're setting Matter Eater Lad up to become their president, this whole political thing that goes all the way back to the Legion of Substitute Heroes special and goes all the way forward to the 5 years later stuff in a weird, odd way.
Yeah.
And that's not the only 5 years later sort of, not connection, but like I was looking at this going, oh, this is a little bit of a roadmap for some interesting nuggets. Braille has been in a recession for years, it says. What's a good way to get out of a recession? Start a war.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what they did in 5 years later, basically?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Go to Imsk. That they are a strong anti-UP movement. There's a strong anti-UP movement on the planet. Again, I mean, we've seen that for a while with like Micro Lad, and you know, they're always doing stuff. You know, Imskians are troublemakers. It's
well, and speaking of imps, this is one of the things I thought was interesting, but I was not making the connections you are. They build small to save money.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I guess. It was just an interesting point.
Well, what's so interesting is like they're building small. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I was going to say, but they still have to build it to size because when they shrink down, it still needs to be big, but technically it's still small. So, yeah.
I guess they save on materials. Labor is going to be the same, but
yeah. Well, it depends. You know, you build out one of those little model kits from as a kid, right? That's you know, you don't need one person to build the Empire State.
Yeah. That's true.
Legos,
That's true.
You know.
Yeah.
The other thing that's the running, not a gag, but the running thing between all this is how interested the host is on whether you can be a tourist there or not.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny. For Karg, again, why isn't it Carggg? Why does it stop at 2 Gs, not 3? That bothers me.
Has it always been 2 Gs though?
I don't know.
Huh.
I'm just annoyed that it's not 3.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That would be a fun little thing.
At the end of the Dryad one, while Block's home is gone, many of his people still live in dormancy and will revive when their trajectories bring them to rest on worlds capable of nurturing their silicon-based life. Trajectory, are they asteroids floating out in space? Did their planet blow up? Is that?
That's how I took it.
Yeah, right? That's fascinating.
Right, because didn't that it's not the Legion of Supervillains. What do they call themselves?
The Rejects.
No, they were
the League of Super Assassins.
Super Assassins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too many leagues and whatnot. Yeah. Because they were all in the same world that had there was a catastrophe. The Legion came to help. There was a misunderstanding. So, but I don't know that they ever. If it was, I can't remember now. If the planet blew up or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that seems to suggest that's exactly what they're doing. They're just out floating in space.
That's fantastic.
Why isn't Block wanting to go out and help them get somewhere?
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Hycraeus. There's a lot of talk about like how they isolate themselves, and then I thought here, is it any wonder the Dark Circle could sort of take a hold on one of their members in the 5 years later Legion? For Orando, notice how they make absolutely no mention, even visually, of Sensor Girl. And we talked about that in an earlier issue.
Right.
As far as the public knows, they do not know that she is Sensor Girl. Starhaven. We always like to point out when cities of the future are larger than they are in the present. And there's a lot of talk about Metropolis spreading all over the East Coast. But this says, the citizens of Starhaven follow customs passed down from the way of life among various populations of original dwellers on the Earth continent, now covered by the greater Metropolis spread. Now, to be fair, I mean, it's like there are obviously tribal lands in the east and in the northeast. It's not only just the west and the southwest, but it made me wonder just really how big is Metropolis? I mean,
yeah,
does it stretch all the way to like Ohio, or does it butt up against Chicago? Did it eat Chicago?
Well, and so that I think I think we're misreading that, because that's how I took it at first when you were reading it. But now looking at it again, I think they're saying that they're Dawnstar's people come from that area that Metropolis now resides in. And I think maybe what you said earlier about it being more like on the east, taking over more or less the East Coast of North America or of America. So I think maybe that's what they're saying there. It's they from the descendants of those people from that eastern portion of the states.
Sure, right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay,
but I like our original take on it. It's like how big is Metropolis? Does it cover half the United States?
Like all the way to the Mississippi?
Yeah,
and I don't know. Whatever was on the Los Angelopolis on the other side just took up everything to the west, to the Rockies, and Coloradolopolis or whatever. I don't know. And then the last one I have is Wyneth. I love this little bit here. The mutation that resulted in the twinning factor in both flora and fauna was not a planned mutagenic alteration, but rather an unexplained symbiotic reaction in both the world and its new inhabitants. No idea what that means. I just like that. Okay, I'll take your word.
Yeah. No, that's kind of neat. Wow, I must have read through these very quickly because I did not pull any of that kind of stuff out.
I'm gonna let you run through the evil trinity. So we'll trade off there.
I will say, going back to Durla, this is the other thing I found interesting. It says Cam's example of being a Legionnaire has helped with negotiation with the Proteans, and we haven't seen we saw the Proteans. I don't remember what issues they are now, but it's been a long time since R.J. Brand was seen with a Protean, and there's this subplot that was going on, and it's disappeared altogether. And so I wonder if this is their way of kind of touching back on that. Because that was one of the subplots I was really interested in. I was hoping that it would develop into something.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
On to the entries.
Sure.
So, like you said, I chose the Legion of Supervillains members, Cosmic King, Lightning Lord, and Saturn Queen, just because they have that connection. I'm always looking for connections in these entries in some way. And Peter rightfully nixed one of my ideas because I was really reaching, and I won't say what it was, but because it was really bad. Anyway, so here we go here.
Well, let's start with this real quick. We're doing Cosmic King, Lightning Lord, and Saturn Queen. Yes. Cosmic King as drawn by Kyle Baker.
Mm-hmm.
Lightning Lord as drawn by Mike Mignola.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturn Queen as drawn by Keith Giffen and Larry Mostert.
Yes. So let's start with Cosmic King. Kyle Baker of what fame? What am I thinking of?
So around this time he was drawing DC's Shadow.
Yes. Okay.
Artist on that. Probably took over after Sienkiewicz left.
Yes. Okay. So what an interesting change or style to draw a 30th century character that we're used to seeing. It's the how head forward the character is, the dark. Oh, I gotta get to the page. Like the dark inks of it. Lavar Balto. Lavar. Wait, is this the first time we get a name for this guy?
Probably.
I think so. He looks formidable in this picture, I have to say. And every other time I've seen him, he's not that. Yeah.
He looks like a twisted version of a heroic like what would you think of a twisted version of Cosmic Boy?
Yeah.
I was quite happy with that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's just different. Mm-hmm. Let's see. The interesting thing about these three entries is the disclaimer that they put in for two of the three and then sort of the third one. And that disclaimer is this. In the past, an adult criminal claiming to be Cosmic King battled the superheroes alongside Dynamo Boy. This is from Adventure Comics 331. Dynamo Boy, Saturn Queen, and an adult Lightning Lord. Whether he was truly who he claimed to be remains to be seen. And I forget which episode it was, Peter, when you brought up the whole idea of these characters, at least Saturn or Cosmic King and Saturn Queen, were the contemporary versions of these characters. And correct me if I'm misremembering, I probably am, of the adult the quote unquote adult versions that we saw in that Adventure Comics issue that we talked about.
Right. It was really just Cosmic King.
Okay.
That's where that sort of played out with him.
Right. Okay. And then the other thing I like to do is compare I don't think I did this last episode, Peter, but I like to compare the entries if they appeared in Who's Who before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to point out that Cosmic King must have had some, I don't know, a nip and a tuck. He shrunk 2 inches, but he gained 10 pounds. Plus his eye color changed. That's just a minor continuity issue, or someone not looking at it or deciding, we have too many blue-eyed people, so he's going to be, I don't know what it was, but I find those kind of things interesting. And I'll talk about another one here in a bit. So, anything from Cosmic King that is striking to you different from before, or?
Just this sort of the same thing. That last paragraph is so interesting, where they're trying to make sense of why there would be adult versions of characters, especially if one of them is supposed to be Lightning Lord. Why are they from the future of the Legion if one of them is supposed to be Lightning Lad's older brother? It doesn't make sense. And then Paul Levitt's in issue 4 tries to make sense, as it says here, right? Angry, he traveled to Earth and decided to use his new powers. He was recruited by the agents of the organization called the Legion of Supervillains against their war against the superheroes, right? Like that's issues 1 through 5, right? Totally negating, every other Legion of Supervillain appearance and story, and putting it all into question. But who's to say that it can't still be the same, right? You meet Cosmic King in the first 5 issues of this series. Element Lad is like, wait, we fought you before. And he's like, no, you haven't. This is the first time I've been on Earth. This is the first time I've confronted you. Who's to say then that in the future they don't go back, for some reason? So
but
it's convoluted.
Yeah, well, and I think they're making it more convoluted by this disclaimer.
Yeah.
It's just a way to say, okay, yeah, we know we did this story in the 60s, and now we're here. So,
right, because the first time they went up against Superman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So it was part of like the adult Legion stories, which technically do they really, take place according to Legion of Superheroes issue 300, right? Right. You could also say this is all post-crisis, so of course any of those kind of things would come into question. So.
Yeah. I just, by calling it out, they are making it much more conspicuous.
Well, that's what they did in the Who's Who, right? Like they were always like in the original Who's Who, the crisis was coming or happening at the same time, so they're like, oh, but we don't know what's going to happen because of the crisis. Well, and then you have the first update where they're like, oh, but the crisis might have affected some of their stories, or this is the new version, right? Revised. This is the so yeah.
Yeah, true.
DC was an interesting read in 1980s post-crisis.
Oh,
literally wondering who was going to survive, which version of a villain, or especially in the Byrne Superman, was like, we got all these new, as we're going to look at with Brainiac. But also, like, what stories existed? Nobody knew. This is the reason why Wolfman wanted to start everything over again.
Yeah.
Which I think in the long run he probably should have done. They probably should have taken his thing. So,
although considering what happened with the New 52, I don't know that it would have been as successful as they might have thought.
I don't know. Think of it back then, though. They had Byrne on Superman, right? And I don't care what anybody says. That Superman run at the time was amazing. Right?
Oh yeah.
Well read. It made Adventures of Superman really great, right? So we were technically reading a new Superman, right? Sure. Wonder Woman. We were reading a new Fantastic, right? Imagine if after year 1, they said, hey, Frank Miller and Mazzucchelli, keep going. Instead of the weird jump that we got into dreadful New Adventures Batman, right? What if they would have jumped, but it was Miller and Mazzucchelli for at least a year or two,
Right.
Technically, the Wally West Flash is technically a new Flash. We
Yeah,
got
yeah.
Suicide Squad. I think what my point is, they had better creative teams
Well,
ready to launch, and they should have taken advantage of that. And they should have said, "Hey, Simonson, stop doing Thor. Come over and do New Gods." Like they should have like gone after the creators at that time with the promise of like a whole new series and a whole new continuity, and just I think I think it wouldn't have hit as strongly as the New 52 because we were just too close to the New 52. You know what I mean? We were too close to what came prior. And it was like then the New 52 hit.
mhm.
And first of all, it was run by Bob Harris. Come on,
Yeah.
and that just wasn't going to work. So I think it would have worked better. Plus, I was a kid. What would I have cared? Some grumpy old man at that time would be, it's not my DC. I don't care. I was only 3-4 years in. Great. Let's do it. Let's change it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a tangent.
Uh,
All right. Mech Lightning Lord.
Yep, Lightning Lord. Same thing in the past. An adult criminal claiming to be Lightning Lord battled the superheroes alongside Dynamo Boy, blah, blah, blah. And an adult Cosmic King. Whether he was truly who he claimed to be, remains to be seen. So, I don't know.
They never follow up on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, the first appearance matches as well. In the original Who's Who for Cosmic King, also Legion of Superheroes #2 is listed as his first appearance. So in both, it's the same information. Nothing out of the ordinary for this entry on my part.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I really dug Mike Mignola's rendition of Lightning Lord. I'd love to see Mignola at that time do some Legion stuff.
Yeah. He doesn't get a chance. I will say, though, we're reading stories in April. We're reading comics from April of 1988, and his Cosmic Odyssey, Mike Mignola's Cosmic Odyssey, with Jim Starlin, comes out in July of 88. So, not that there's a Legion connection there, but that artwork feels like he's not at his Hellboy stage yet, but he's at this interesting middle ground, which is fun to look at, like, because that Cosmic Odyssey is beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that might have been my introduction to his work. I'd have to go back and look, but that Cosmic Odyssey thing was just something that I randomly pulled off the shelf one, at the comic shop that I went to. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? So yeah. Saturn Queen. First of all, I love the new look that Giffen has given her. I mean, I like the old look too, but this is definitely different. But yeah, very nice. Let's see here. So her entry doesn't contain that same disclaimer as the other two, but it does talk about her being a young adult when she worked with Dynamo Boy and the others. So that is in continuity. But that doesn't quite make sense.
But it does say, and her story, when coupled with those of her teammates, has since been deemed suspect by the Legionnaires. So.
Sure. I mean, I guess that's a way around it, but come on. But it does try to explain how she is not an older adult, even though she looked like that in the original. So I thought that was nice. I wanted to say that the comment about these three disappearing en route to Takron Galtos at that time just begs for a flashback tale. To something to do with them would be kind of neat. Although I think we've had enough of Lightning Lord in more recent issues. Let's see here. In the original Who's Who, Adventure Comics 331, which seems to be more direct in disassociating the adult legion of supervillains from the contemporary, or seem to be more direct in disassociating them. In reading those, comparing those, so that it's interesting that they're kind of walking it back a little bit in these entries, but I guess that's to be expected. This is another one where the poor woman who's unnamed, her name and homeworld are unknown. It says here. So even though they talk a lot about Titan, but anyway, she has lost 3 inches off her height. Maybe it's just the hairdo. But she's lost 30 pounds.
Oh,
so significant diet, I guess. And her like Cosmic King, her eyes are a different color. I don't know why they're doing that, but okay.
It would have been just interesting if, because Mech is so off the wall, like, what if he was just like, hey, let's just say we're from the future, just to flip him out, like maybe it was just his deluded whatever. So then all the rest of it could still sort of be in play. And I mean, even with his lightning powers, he could have done something to their brains, like maybe if he had real good control of his lightning and the synapses, all that stuff in your brain, So I don't know. I think there's other ways they could have gone around the whole future.
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
They could have just said because of the crisis, those stories are now in question. Just done.
Or is that their weird, circuitous way of doing that without calling crisis? I don't know. Yeah,
I guess.
I was trying to find out some more about this, and in my searches, internet searches, I did find a reference, and I know this is not canon because it's not from DC, but on Mike's Amazing World of Comics. There's a note about these adult villains are from a different timeline, as shown in Legion of Superheroes number 300. And I believe, was that what you were talking about in episode 4? That's why I had, just to listeners know, I texted Peter and said, hey, what was that episode that you talked about these guys and your theory about who they are and within the timeline and all that stuff. And so I went back and listened to episode 4, and you brought up a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, different timeline is the perfect out for this. Especially considering what we know now with the time trapper and time travel and all that stuff, it has to be a different separate timeline altogether, because the timeline that we are currently in with the Legion, there's no way they could be from the future or whatever.
Right.
And that's all I got for these.
Who's Who update.
Okay.
Issue number 1 of 4. This time with Mark Waid as the main editor. Bob Greenberger is he's like a consulting editor. And of course, Peter Sanderson still in play. One thing different about this update, which I wanted to make note of, this update will not feature characters outside of the DC universe to be dealt with at a future time, which again, never happened. So even though in the first Who's Who, they put in things like Atari Force and I don't know, like Spanner's Galaxy and the Conquerors of the Barren Earth and, all those kind of, off-kilter stuff. They decided not to do that with this round, but they never got back to it. They never did another update after this, so anything they might have mentioned that could have gotten an entry, they just never decided never to do.
Yeah. More's the pity.
Yeah. We're going to take a look at Brainiac and Green Lantern Corps. Green Lantern Corps is really just because of the final line where it says, it is known, however, that sometime in the future, the GL Corps will be back at full power and serve the universe by the late 30th century. And the reason they're saying that is because at this time, there's only 7 members on Earth, because the Guardians have gone off to boink the Zamorans, and there really is no Corps after the crisis. They got kind of decimated, and the main focus was Earth. So, in a story sense, maybe DC was like, we don't know when we're going to get back to that. So,
Hmm.
but we do know by the 30th century that there are a lot of Green Lanterns running around. So let's just make a mention of it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's fine.
including the person who became Universo.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And that artwork is by Joe Staton, who was drawing the book at the time, I think. I
That
don't remember.
sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Brainiac, this version that we've been reading about in this secondary segment. Whenever anything Legion related pops up in the Superman books, and this was something that we dealt with many episodes ago. This new version of Brainiac, who is a circus performer, a mentalist, who gets taken over by the real alien, quote unquote, Brainiac, known as Vril Dox. This human version is Milton Moses Fine, as first appeared in Adventures of Superman 438. This entry as drawn by Jerry Ordway. Pretty good entry. Always a character, always a revision, a revised character that as it says on the corner, that I was never a fan of. I'm just not a fan of this.
The Milton Fine.
Yeah, like
yeah.
This. I guess I had never, we explained this before, until I realized there really was a version with an alien, the true Brainiac. When I thought it was just sort of like an Earth version, I was like, well, that don't make sense. That's kind of dumb. But whatever. I guess Byrne wanted to do something a little different. The only thing I really got from this entry, because we read those issues before, or those segments of issues, where it says known relatives, marital status. Vril Dox married. What? Did we know that? Because I looked it up and I could not find that he had a wife.
I've never encountered that.
Like, I guess it makes sense if he had to have a son, right? Vril Dox 2. But like in the original pre-crisis continuity, the people of Kolu just made him a son, made him a protege or whatever. Like, I don't remember.
Was it a clone thing?
Yeah, something like that. So,
well, and wasn't that all that kind of came out of the Legion book?
Yeah, which we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So I'm confused why it says marital status, and maybe I just didn't research it enough.
Or maybe there was a Silver Age story in which Mrs. Brainiac shows up. I don't know. I
guess.
I thought Brainiac was the original Brainiac. The Silver Age Brainiac was am I completely misremembering this stuff, that he was a robot?
Yeah, he's a construct of the Kaluans. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
but they gave him Vril Dox 2. They gave him a kid in his very first appearance. You see it. Yeah. But this suggesting that this Vril Dox is married, like, where are they getting that from? We've read every appearance so far, and I don't recall talking about that.
Yeah, and I had what I mostly I was focused on the legacy, right? So we have Vril Dox. Vril Dox the second is, am I right? That's the son.
Mm-hmm.
That we got. It's Brainiac 2, and then we have a third one, Prandox. This is a descendant. I'm looking. Wow, this is from Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah.
That's Brainiac 3, and then Pran's grandson, Kazdox, is Brainiac 4, and then we get Coral, who is Brainiac 5.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm gonna, it says here, this is post-crisis under the invasion entry. Vril Dox 2 is now a clone of Vril Dox, rather than his adopted son, as he is created by Vril Dox himself. So whatever that is. Oh, no, it says here, under the Silver Age, Vril Dox was a young Kaluan who was adopted by the computer tyrants of Kalu. And declared Brainiac's son. Okay. There you go.
And that's it. Those are all the notes I have. Just that simple.
God, 80 years of DC history, and it's really complicated sometimes.
All right. Speaking of Superman, we are looking at all the Supergirl appearances because it's going to play out very soon. Her origins tying back to the whole death of Superboy. So we want to keep watch on this. So this is issue 20 of Superman with a fantastic cover. I mean, just really, I don't know. I think it's a clever cover. Byrne always had a hard on for the Doom Patrol. He did.
Yeah. Well, he eventually worked on after his Superman run, right?
Well, years after he did.
Yeah.
He finally got the Doom Patrol. Yeah. It wasn't very good. But at this time, he did the Doom Patrol Secret Origins annual. Was it I think it was an annual or was an issue. He did do that version because he just wanted the Doom Patrol in the worst way. But I like that cover with Superman, Robot Man, and Metallo. It's smart. Yeah. It's a smart cover.
In that, that three squished faces, all doing the same expression. Yeah, that is really cool.
And calling them the Men of Steel.
Yeah.
Right.
And the backgrounds behind Robot Man and Metallo, I think he's trying to evoke circuitry, and they're different. So I like that. That's kind of a neat concept too, or if it's him or somebody else doing that part. But yeah, really nice cover. Really, very striking, very visually. Hey, you got to pay attention to this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So on the heels of her last appearance, we get Lana Lang in Smallville inviting the Kents because in the last appearance of Supergirl, Supergirl and Lana Lang bumped into each other. And since she's wearing a Superman costume, Lana's like, well, let me go call the Kents because they all know Clark Kent is Superman. And so they meet and they have a brief little conversation. We get a little bit more about her. And then it turns into this thing where Clark goes to Smallville and meets Lana, but you have to go read Doom Patrol number 10 for that. Turns out that the Lana that he met was this Supergirl. Like if we needed any other clue about who she possibly could be. And she's got her, her memory has been iffy, but it seems to be coming back now. And she knows that really what she needs to do is she needs Superman because they need him for some reason, which we still don't know. And the last thing we see is Superman flying away and Supergirl ready to, I guess, quote unquote, meet him. Like they're going to finally have their real first meeting. So those are the three sequences here. We can, if there's anything a little more detailed you want to bring up.
Let's see here. You confused me on something that I totally misread. So you are correct about that. Clark meeting Lana, but it's not Lana. I thought that was a mistake. I thought it was a coloring mistake. So, That colors things differently for me on this. Mm-hmm. So let's see here. What notes did I have on that? Well, just going back to the very beginning of the issue, Supergirl. Oh, wait, before I get to that, a bone to pick. Why would Lana take Supergirl to the Kents and not directly take Supergirl to Metropolis? I mean, seems rather obvious that she needs to talk to Clark.
Right.
So that's just okay. But I like the slow reveal that they've been doing with Supergirl. I complained last time about Superman 19, how when they bumped into each other and then we didn't get anything else the rest of the issue. I'm like, oh my God, you got to give me something. And then, but we get it, but not in the way that I was anticipating. They totally skip over the conversation that Lana would have had with Supergirl to show us the cants. But then, like I said, going back to what I was saying, we get these slow reveals, slow revelations where Supergirl's like, she knows them. She also makes some comment about, I haven't seen cars like this since, and she trails off. So, there's something weird about this, even to Supergirl. And then, she just kind of freaks out a little bit. You're, talking to Martha, you're dead. You were dead even before I'm so confused. We go back to that trope for this character that we've seen so far. But then, and oh man, I totally misread that. Superman arrives to see Lana. Ready for a picnic, Lana? Clark, you bet. And you're right. This is Supergirl.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? What? How do we go from
where's Lana? What did she know Clark was coming? Why is this is so weird? So weird interjection.
I did not like the way this was constructed. And then, and this is beside the point for Supergirl, we get that box, that dialogue or caption box, and then we go right into the second part of the Doom Patrol story, which the box says you need to go read Doom Patrol number 10 before you read any further. I'm like, who the hell authorized this? This is the dumbest thing. This is the dumbest This is the dumbest, hey, go read this issue thing I've ever seen in comic books before. Anyway. So, yeah, like I said, it was weird I first read that as, oh, that is Lana. That totally makes sense. But then, you get to, I don't know what page this is because they've removed them. And I'm looking on the DC Universe app here. You have Lana / Supergirl in this scene in a truck or a car. Where's Lana again? And so she's hearing this stuff on the radio, and then she changes into Supergirl. I'm like, what is going on here? What? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is so strangely presented, and unnecessarily so, or it is revealing things that we're not quite clear on. And I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's Byrne's odd storytelling style that he sometimes throws in. Yeah, I've noticed, and it is moving towards what the truth is about Supergirl.
The whole conversation she says about Martha reveals a certain part of her history, which we will find out. Like, it kind of makes sense with what I know, but I don't want to bring it into the conversation because we haven't gotten there yet, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing she says here, it would seem Clark has not been faring so well in this as he had hoped. My instinct is to act, to help. She's talking about the battle. But Lex cautioned me to remain in hiding until my memory is fully restored, which is what's going on. Mm-hmm. Still, the fact that I remember that is sufficient to tell me I am almost whole again. Whole enough to know my mission will be forfeit if Superman dies now. So whether I'm ready, it seems time has come for this world to meet Supergirl. So it's like, okay, all that stuff all that memory loss is finally coming into play. And it's really just Byrne's way to drag it out because he knows it's going to happen next issue. And it's going to be a 3-part story. Maybe this is a way to do that weird little cutting of crossing over into Doom Patrol is just a way to get readers onto Doom Patrol, because Superman's the more popular book. Paul Kupperberg was writing it. He has some input for this story, But then it's also weird because, there's been some coloring stuff because of her hair. We've seen Supergirl as a blonde. We've seen her as a redhead.
Yes.
I did look this up and found this through a Google search. Byrne talking about Supergirl. the whole notion of why Supergirl. And he said, that was my idea. I felt it was probably not a good idea to let the copyright on the name slip away. And what the heck? It was a chance to do a storyline guaranteed to mess with some heads. A significant part of my job description. He's so burned. Unfortunately, several coloring errors, Supergirl being a redhead when she should have been a blonde, tipped the hand and made the story probably even more confusing than it was meant to be. I planned to have her as a recurrent character in the Superman titles. When I left the book, Roger Stern came up with the angle of her being Matrix. So that part was not Byrne's idea, although we'll find out. I mean, technically it is his idea because of what we find out in the 3 chapters that we're going to read later. It's just what they do with her after that was Stern's idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it'll make much more sense when we read further.
Interesting. He blames it on coloring mistakes as opposed to story points that I think also contributes to the it. Yeah. But well, and speaking of coloring mistakes, as she flies away in her Supergirl outfit, you see her leg, part of her leg is colored blue. But given who Supergirl is, as it reveals to be later, that could easily be explained away.
Yeah, and it's just so odd. Like, wouldn't Clark know that that's not Lana? From what we learn later, he would sense that she's. It's the same thing what he felt about the Superboy that he met. Like he knew it was not the same person that he was.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, and that's a great comparison because we don't get a whole lot of Clark's point of view in this. It's very much distanced. And I guess it had to be on purpose for the mystery to be stretched out or presented in the way that it is.
Yeah.
But it is given that they approach the Superboy thing in that way, and not, I guess you don't want to repeat yourself, but it's an inconsistency of character, as you're saying. So yeah, but it's so. I want that conversation between Clark and Lana here in this scene. It's like, what? Come on. I wanted more of that and less of Cat Grant trying to get into Jimmy's pants.
Yeah, so weird.
Ugh.
Byrne is so weird when it comes to age gaps. Yeah. Ugh. And in his mind, he probably was like, oh, I'm going to do this because everybody's accusing me. Like I do it with younger girls and older men. But see, I do it with older women. They can be creeps too. And it's like, well, that's not the point, you maniac. All to say that we are going to wrap up the saga of the Supergirl saga in a Tales episode. Because next episode is episode 50. It's going to be a big episode. We don't need more than we already have on our plate. So then the next episode after episode 50 will be a Tales episode. We will do the Supergirl saga so we can finally put that to rest. But it's also because it's going to have connections to some of the stuff that we've been reading with Legion of Superheroes. So we felt, let's make it a dedicated episode so that we can try to wrap our heads around, again, going back to concepts that make our heads buggy, So it'll be interesting to kind of like go back to the death of Superboy and then read this issue and see how it all makes sense. And that's one of our plans after this episode. Good? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Good discussion. I really liked our talk about this issue.
Yeah.
So, yeah, looking forward to issue 50.
Next time around. Normally we would do Wanderers, but Eric and I have decided to also put Wanderers into a Tales episode. I think we most likely we might do 2 episodes. We'll see how that goes, but it won't be for a while. Again, we like to do things in publication, so we're going to let the first 6, 7 issues of the Wanderers go by, and wherever that falls in publication, if at that time we feel like it's worth doing 1 episode on the first half and then 1 episode on the second half, then we'll have to wait another 6 or 7 issues. So. We're not going to include the Wanderers issue by issue because these episodes are just going to be too long.
Yeah.
And maybe there won't be as much to say. Who knows?
I will say, though, I did read Wanderers 2, and I liked it much better than issue 1.
Oh, see?
A little preview there.
And I don't know.
We'll see if that holds up.
I don't know if we've talked since this happened, but I have all the issues of the Wanderers now.
Ah, okay.
I picked it up at Baltimore Comic-Con in September. I had issue 1, and I was going to read the rest on the app, and now I have all the issues. So now we definitely do have to cover it because I spent money on those issues.
Got to make it worthwhile.
That's right.
So wait, so that means, dear listeners, that not only do you have to keep reading along with us with the Legion of Superheroes issues, but now you got to go read this Supergirl saga and the Wanderers and send us, questions, feedback, etc.
Yes, please. Yes. If Mike can do it, you can do it as well.
Exactly.
Next episode is the big episode 50. I would also encourage you to send us some thoughts on issue 50, but also on the Legion project, right? It's going to be a celebration of not only issue 50, but of our podcast. So, please, by all means, send us some info, peter@thedailyrios.com.
Or you can send email to me at longboxreview@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. We hopefully will have a fun thing for episode 50 that we won't mention.
Yeah. I hope so.
I hope it works out. Yeah, that'll be fun. But when you hear it, you'll know what it is. So that'll be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it. All right. I think we're done. We need to get out of here. It's late. My voice is going. So until next time. Yeah.
Yep.
Long live the Legion Project
Podcast.
See ya.
Bye-bye.